The stranger at Widow's porch. The wind hit the porch like a warning. Boards creaked under Evelyn Marsh's boots as she clutched the lantern tighter, its light trembling across the yard. The sky hung low and bruised, thunder muttering in the far hills. Her hands smelled of kerosene and fear. She had bolted the barn door herself, nailing the last plank just as the storm began to crawl in from the desert. The horses were restless inside, stamping and snorting at the scent of rain. Every sound felt sharper tonight. The rustle of dry grass, the squeak of the weather vane, the far-off echo of hooves she prayed were only in her mind. Then came a voice. "Ma'am." She spun, the lantern flaring. A tall figure stood just beyond the gate, half shrouded in dust and stormlight. Hat pulled low, coat dark with road grit. He didn't move closer. "Evening," he said. "Didn't mean to startle you. Just looking for a place out of the rain." Her breath caught. The sound of a man's voice, deep, steady, after weeks of silence in the house, felt like a ghost come calling. She tried to steady her tone. "You're trespassing, mister." He nodded once, calm as a fence post. "Then I'll keep to the porch. Storm's coming hard, ma'am. You don't mind, I'll sit till it passes." Lightning cracked behind him, white across the sky. For a heartbeat she saw the edges of him. Worn boots, trail-dusted coat, a revolver holstered under his arm. Her heart jumped. Inside the house, her youngest whimpered. "Mama, go back to bed," Evelyn called softly. "Close the curtain." The stranger's gaze shifted toward the window, then back to her. He didn't pry, didn't smile, just waited. Rain began to spit on the porch roof, tapping like nervous fingers. She swallowed hard. "You ride far?" "Far enough," he said. "Name's Jonas." She hesitated before giving hers. "Evelyn Marsh." At her name, something flickered in his eyes, recognition or pity, she couldn't tell. She noticed then how tired he looked, as if the road had worn the years into him. "I ain't looking for trouble," he added quietly. She turned her face away. "Trouble's already found me." The wind rose, throwing grit across the porch. She tried to relight her courage, but it felt thin as the flame in her lamp. "You hungry?" she asked finally. He paused. "Wouldn't turn down a plate, ma'am." She stepped aside. "Then come in." Inside, the air smelled of wood smoke and biscuits going stale. The cabin was clean but worn, patched curtains, a Bible on the table, her late husband's boots by the hearth. Jonas stood just inside the door, hat in hand, eyes drifting over the small room without a word. "Sit," she said, setting down 2 tin plates. "There's beans, if that's enough." "It's plenty." He ate slow, polite, as rain hammered the roof and lightning flared in the windows. Evelyn poured coffee, watching him from across the table. His hands were steady, scarred, and too practiced with the knife he used. Outside, thunder rolled, followed by something else. Hooves. Faint but certain. Jonas lifted his head. "You expecting company?" Her face drained. "No." He stood, moving to the window with a quietness that came from habit, not fear. Through the curtains, the glow of torches flickered down the muddy road. Evelyn's hand shook around the lantern. "They're early," she whispered. "Who?" She met his eyes, desperate now. "Clint Dorsey and his men. They want my land. Said they'd come by dawn. Guess they couldn't wait." Jonas's gaze didn't change. "How many?" "5. Maybe 6. He looked toward the door, rain dripping off the brim of his hat. "You got a rifle?" "Broke," she said. "Barrel split last winter." He breathed once through his nose, slow and steady. "Then I reckon we'll have to make do." She didn't understand the calm in his tone, that quiet certainty. Fear pushed the words out before she could stop them. "Can you pretend to be my husband tonight?" The request hung in the air, raw and trembling. Jonas turned toward her, eyes dark in the lamplight. "If they think a man's here," she continued, voice breaking, "they'll back off. Just for tonight. Please." He studied her face, not with judgment, but with something older, deeper. Then he gave a single nod. "All right." She let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. "Thank you." He picked up her husband's coat from the peg by the door, the weight of it settling on his shoulders as if it belonged there. "You best stay behind me when they come." The sound of hooves grew louder. Her children's faces appeared at the stairs, wide eyes, trembling lips. She motioned them back. Jonas stepped out onto the porch, lantern light following him into the storm. The first torch came into view, Clint Dorsey leading the pack, grin wide beneath his hat. "Well now," he called through the rain. Didn't figure the widow Marsh had found herself company. Jonas stood silent, one hand resting near his coat but not drawing the gun. Dorsey spat into the mud. "You her new man, stranger? Or just another drifter hiding behind a woman's skirts?" The rain hissed. Jonas didn't answer. Dorsey's smile faltered. Something in the way Jonas stood, still, unblinking, shadowed by lightning, made the men shift in their saddles. "You tell your woman," Dorsey said, "the debt's due come sunrise. We'll be back to collect what's ours." Jonas's voice came low and steady through the storm. "You'll get your due at dawn." The torches wavered in the rain. No one spoke again. Dorsey jerked his reins and turned. The riders vanished into the night, leaving only the sound of hooves and the smell of wet dust. Evelyn stood in the doorway, clutching the frame. "You didn't have to." He cut her off gently. "Get the kids to bed." Inside, the storm deepened. Jonas set the lantern by the window, sat down by the hearth, and stared into the flames. His face softened, not with peace, but with memory. Evelyn lingered nearby, watching the firelight trace the old scars along his jaw. "You've seen men like them before," she said softly. He nodded once. "Who are you, really?" His eyes stayed on the fire. "Just a man who's done too much living." Outside, thunder rolled across the plains. Inside, the house held its breath. And somewhere in the distance, too faint to notice, the wind carried the low cry of a coyote, warning that dawn would bring reckoning. The night, the wind changed. Rain hammered the roof, loud enough to drown out a heartbeat. Jonas Hale stood at the window, watching the torchlight fade into the storm, then vanish altogether. His reflection flickered in the glass. Eyes sharp, jaw clenched, hand resting on the revolver at his side. Behind him, the fire hissed and cracked. Evelyn moved quietly, checking the shutters, whispering her children back to bed. The youngest clung to her dress, asking if the bad men would return. She lied softly, saying no, while her eyes stayed on Jonas's back. When the last door was bolted, she spoke. "They'll come again." Jonas didn't turn. "Yes." She crossed her arms, trembling, though the room was warm. "You said at dawn." "I did." Silence stretched between them, filled by the steady pound of rain. Jonas finally stepped away from the window and hung his hat on the peg. Water slid off his coat, dark puddles spreading on the floorboards. Evelyn fetched a towel and offered it. He didn't take it. "You should rest," he said. She gave a small, bitter laugh. "Rest? With them out there?" Jonas looked at her for the first time since the riders left. "They won't come before dawn. Men like Dorsey drink after they threaten. Makes them feel brave again." Her voice softened. "And you? You've seen men like him before." He didn't answer. The clock on the mantel ticked slow and heavy. The fire popped, throwing gold across the floor. Evelyn studied the stranger in her husband's coat, the way he stood like a man used to command. Not pleading, not afraid, but waiting. Finally, she broke the silence. "You handled them without firing a shot." Jonas's eyes drifted to the window again. Guns are last resort, but sometimes the sight of a steady hand's enough. Her fingers tightened on the towel. "You said you're just a man who's done too much living. That means something. You've been someone before." His jaw shifted, and for a moment she thought he'd speak. Instead, he turned back toward the fire. "Get some sleep, Mrs. Marsh." She wanted to protest, but stopped. There was something final in his tone, like a door closing. She walked away, every step echoing against the floorboards. When she reached the stairs, she looked back. Jonas sat by the fire, elbows on his knees, staring into the flames as if they burned through time itself. Hours passed. The rain softened to a whisper. Wind moaned through the cracks in the boards. Jonas remained where he was, motionless, the firelight painting lines across his weathered face. In the quiet, faint memories stirred. A scream, a house burning, the sound of a child's cry cut short. He blinked once, slow, then stood and poured cold coffee into a tin cup. The door creaked behind him. Evelyn stood there, wrapped in a shawl. "Can't sleep," she said. He didn't look up. "You shouldn't be out of bed." She moved closer to the fire, her shadow flickering beside his. "You're still awake." "Old habits," he said. "Storms make me restless." Her eyes followed the faint scars across his hands. "Soldier. Once." "Which war?" He hesitated. "All of them." She frowned but didn't press. "You could have left after they rode off." "You stayed." "I said I would." "You don't owe me anything." He turned then, his gaze meeting hers fully for the first time. "Maybe not you, but I owe something." Outside, wind slammed against the shutters. Evelyn flinched. Jonas didn't move. He stepped closer to the door, head tilted slightly. "They're not back," he said quietly. "Just wind changing direction." "How can you tell?" He glanced over his shoulder. "When you've lived long enough with danger, it starts talking to you in the dark." For a long moment, neither spoke. The storm pressed against the windows, soft but insistent, like a hand trying to get in. Evelyn sank into the chair across from him, her eyes tired. "I used to pray every night," she said quietly, "for someone to come, just someone to help. Guess I didn't expect him to walk out of the dust." Jonas looked away. "I didn't expect to find a fight worth talking again." Her voice trembled. "You think this land's worth fighting for?" He gave a faint smile that never reached his eyes. "Not the land. The folks on it." The fire dimmed. Shadows lengthened. Evelyn leaned her head against the chair and closed her eyes. For the first time in weeks, she didn't dream of her husband's fall, or the debt collectors, or the hollow ache of loss. She dreamt of silence, deep and steady, like a man's breath in the next room. Jonas stayed awake. Near dawn, the storm thinned to mist. Jonas rose quietly and stepped outside. The ground was slick, air heavy with the smell of wet sage. He walked to the barn, boots sinking into the mud. The horses stirred when they heard him, calm under his touch. He checked the saddle, tightening the straps, running a hand over the worn leather. As he adjusted the stirrup, something caught the faint morning light, a silver spur tucked deep inside the saddlebag. It gleamed, polished by time and dust. He froze. For a long while he just stared at it, the mark engraved into its side. Hale Ranch, Silver County. He closed his hand around the spur until his knuckles whitened. From the doorway came a small voice. "Mister." Jonas turned. Evelyn's boy stood there, barefoot, hair messy from sleep. The child's eyes were curious, innocent. He pointed at the spur. "That's yours." Jonas nodded slowly. "Was. Long time ago." "Looks real pretty," the boy said. "Mama says pretty things come from good folks." Jonas almost smiled. "Your mama's wise." He placed the spur back in the saddlebag and ruffled the boy's hair. "Go on back inside. It's cold out." The boy hesitated, then ran toward the house, calling for his mother. Jonas stayed where he was, staring at the horizon. The first light was breaking, thin gold over red clay and wet grass. Behind him, Evelyn's voice carried softly from the porch. "You didn't tell me you own a ranch." He didn't turn. "Don't own much of anything now." "You lied." "I didn't say I was poor." Her tone was quiet, not angry, just heavy. "You came here hiding from something." Jonas's hand tightened on the reins. "Not hiding. Trying to remember what it's like to matter." For a moment, the only sound was the wind through the barn. Then Evelyn spoke again, gentler this time. "You matter here." Jonas looked toward her, the widow standing barefoot in dawn's first light, her children behind her, eyes wide and trusting. He wanted to say something, but the words never came. Instead, he nodded once, almost like a vow. "Then I'll see this through." And as the sun rose, the wind shifted, cool, dry, carrying the scent of dust and gun oil. Somewhere beyond the ridge, a hawk screamed across the sky. The night had passed, but the storm had only changed its shape. Dust, blood, and revelation. The first gunshot shattered the quiet. Jonas dropped behind the water trough as splinters burst from the barn door. The smell of gunpowder filled the dawn air, bitter and raw. Evelyn's scream carried from the porch, then the slam of the door as she pulled her children inside. Jonas rose slowly, revolver drawn. The light was pale, the ground still slick from last night's rain. Across the yard, Clint Dorsey's men spread out like wolves, rifles ready, faces half hidden by dust and shadow. "Come on out, stranger." Dorsey's voice cracked the morning air. "Time's up for playing house." Jonas's boots sank into the mud as he stepped forward. His breath came steady. His coat, dark with rain and dust, flapped once in the wind. "Morning came quicker than I thought," he said, loud enough to carry. Laughter rose from the riders. One of them spat. "You talk big for a man standing alone." Jonas's eyes flicked toward the barn, the windows, the hill. No movement, good. The widow had listened. Dorsey rode closer, reins tight, eyes mean. "You don't know who you're standing against." Jonas tilted his head slightly. "I reckon I do." Dorsey sneered. "You're a fool, mister. Ain't no one helps a marsh and lives long enough to brag about it." "Funny," Jonas said, his voice quiet now. "I could say the same about men who burn ranches." The words hit like a bullet. Dorsey's grin faltered. The others shifted uneasily, glancing between them. Jonas took another step forward. "Silver County. 5 years back. Hale Ranch." The color drained from Dorsey's face. "You," Jonas cut him off. "You left a man in the ashes. Took his cattle. Left his wife and son buried in the dust." For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then Dorsey snarled, spurring his horse forward. "Kill him." Gunfire exploded. Jonas dove sideways, rolled through the mud, and fired twice, clean, fast, deadly. One man fell from his horse. Another clutched his arm, screaming. Jonas moved like he'd never forgotten how, smooth, deliberate, every shot an echo of an old life buried deep. Smoke hung in the air, turning the sunrise gray. Dorsey fired from horseback, bullets slamming into the trough. Jonas crouched, reloaded, then rose slow, his eyes cold and steady. "You're supposed to be dead," Dorsey spat. Jonas's tone was flat. "I was." The men hesitated, shaken now. They'd heard the stories about the rancher who rode alone into outlaw country, the one who never missed. Jonas Hale, the man who disappeared after losing everything. He stepped out from cover, the mud sucking at his boots. "You burned my name," he said, voice low but carrying. "But you didn't finish the job." One outlaw raised his rifle. Jonas shot first. The man dropped where he stood. The last two turned their horses to run. Jonas let them go, his gun lowered, smoke trailing from the barrel. Only Dorsey remained, breathing hard, fury twisting his face. "You think this changes anything?" Dorsey hissed. "You'll die same as your family." Jonas's jaw clenched. "That was your mistake." He fired once. Dorsey's hat flew off as the bullet grazed his ear. The outlaw yelped, tumbling from the saddle. He scrambled backward, boots sliding in the mud, eyes wide with something far beyond fear. Jonas walked toward him, revolver steady. "Go," he said. "Head west. Don't look back." Dorsey's lips trembled. You ain't gonna kill me?" Jonas's gaze didn't waver. "The desert will." Dorsey stumbled to his horse, mounted, and rode hard into the burning horizon. Silence fell again, thick and heavy. Only the wind moved, tugging at the bodies in the dirt. Jonas stood still for a long moment, then holstered his gun. His right sleeve was dark with blood, a deep cut along his shoulder where a bullet had grazed him. He pressed a hand to it, grimacing. The cabin door creaked open. Evelyn stepped out slowly, eyes wide, children behind her. Her face was pale, trembling between relief and disbelief. He turned toward her, breathing hard. "It's done." She took a hesitant step forward, then another, until she was standing close enough to see the wound. "You're hurt. Nothing that won't heal." Her hand hovered near his arm, afraid to touch. "You could have been killed." He met her gaze. Wouldn't have been the first time. She blinked back tears. "Who are you really?" Jonas hesitated. Then he unbuckled his holster and laid it on the porch rail, slow and deliberate. "Name's Jonas Hale. Used to own a place near Silver County." Her eyes widened. "The Hale Ranch." He nodded once. "Was mine, till Dorsey's gang burned it down. My family was inside." Evelyn covered her mouth, her voice breaking. "Oh, Lord, I buried him myself," Jonas said quietly. "Then I left. Thought I'd seen all the good this world had to offer. And now, He looked toward the children, peeking from the doorway. Now I know I hadn't. The words hung there, heavy, honest, final. Evelyn stepped closer, gently placing her hand on his arm despite the blood. You saved us, she said softly. You didn't have to. He looked down at her, the edge of something like a smile touching his eyes. Maybe I needed Savon to. Behind them, the morning light broke fully across the valley, gold spilling over the ridges, turning the wet ground to fire. The bodies of the fallen outlaws cast long shadows, fading into the dust. Jonas walked past them toward the barn, slow and steady, leaving red footprints in the mud. Evelyn watched him go, her heart caught somewhere between sorrow and something new she didn't dare name. When he reached the fence, he stopped, resting a hand on the post. The wind carried the scent of gunpowder and rain. He looked back once, his voice low but clear. Door seal spread the word. No one will trouble this place again. Evelyn stepped down from the porch. And you? He adjusted his hat. I'll stay till the fences are mended. After that, I'll see where the road leads. She wanted to call him back, to ask him not to go, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she nodded, eyes glistening. Jonas turned toward the wide, empty horizon. The sun caught the silver spur in his saddlebag, glinting once, bright as memory, before he closed the flap. The land was quiet again, but different now. The kind of quiet that comes after justice has spoken. And somewhere far beyond the hills, the wind began to shift, carrying the sound of a lone rider's promise, soft as prayer, sharp as truth. The showdown beneath the blood moon. The night burned red above the canyon, like the heavens themselves had opened a wound. The moon hung low and swollen, its light painting the sand in blood. The air carried a dry hum, thick with gun oil, horse sweat, and the metallic promise of death. Isabella stood at the edge of the canyon's lip, her shawl snapping in the wind. The children were gone, hidden deep in the rocks as the stranger had told her. But she could still hear their faint cries carried by the night. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of what she now knew. The stranger beside her wasn't a hired drifter. He wasn't even poor. The silver glinting beneath his coat, the engraved initials J.C. McCall, had told her everything. The man who'd pretended to be her husband was John Cole McCall, the richest rancher this side of the Rio Grande. And tonight, he'd come in this. Down below, torches flickered. The iron men from Black Creek Mine were spreading out in the dark, their boots crunching the gravel like slow thunder. 30 of them, armed and hungry for blood. Their leader, a thick-set man with a scar splitting his cheek, shouted up, "Send the widow down, McCall. You've had your fun. That land belongs to us." McCall said nothing. He just slid his Winchester from its saddle holster and checked the rounds with a slow, steady click. The sound echoed off the canyon walls like the ticking of fate. "They won't stop," Isabella whispered, clutching his arm. "They'll kill you. They'll burn my home." McCall's jaw tightened. "Ain't your home anymore," he muttered. "It's ours now." Before she could reply, he was moving, fast, like a storm breaking free. He dropped to one knee, sighted the torchlight below, and fired. The first shot split the night, shattering one of the torches. The men scattered, cursing. Then came the second shot, and the scarred leader spun and fell, his torch tumbling into the dust. Silence. For a breathless moment, no one moved. Then the gunfire roared to life. Bullets screamed against the rocks, sending showers of sparks into the air. Isabella crouched low, covering her ears as the stranger, her husband for a night, stood his ground, firing methodically, his silhouette framed in the red moonlight. Each shot landed true, each breath measured like a man who danced with death too many times to count. The canyon was alive with echoes, the groan of dying men, the bark of rifles, the wind slicing through smoke. And then came a shout from below. "McCall, you think a name can save you? We own the law now." McCall's rifle clicked empty. He tossed it aside, unholstered his revolver, and called back, voice low and hard. "Then let's see who owns the night." He fired once, twice, 3 times. Men fell like shadows under firelight. When the smoke thinned, The canyon floor was a graveyard of broken torches. The last few riders turned tail, vanishing into the black like cowards chasing dawn. McCall staggered backward, reloading with shaking hands. His coat was torn, blood dripping from his sleeve. Isabella caught him before he could fall. "You're hit," she cried. "Not bad," he rasped. "Just close enough to make it look real." She pressed a hand to his wound anyway. Her eyes burned, not from the smoke, but from something deeper, older. "Why, John? Why help me? You could have let them take the land. You don't owe me anything." He looked at her then, the proud tilt of her chin, the dirt on her face, the courage that refused to break. "I owed your husband," he said softly. "Fought beside him in the war. He saved my life outside San Jacinto. Promised him I'd look after his family if it ever came to it." Her breath caught. "You never told me. Didn't seem the right time," he murmured, a faint smile ghosting his lips. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of sage and spent gunpowder. Somewhere below, a wounded horse screamed and fell silent. The blood moon dipped lower, staining the horizon gold. For a long moment, they just stood there, two souls carved from the same unforgiving land, bound not by love, but by something older, loyalty, loss, and the strange mercy of fate. Then Isabella said, "You can't stay. The law will come." He nodded. "They'll call it murder." "It was justice," she whispered. He met her eyes. "Justice don't always matter to the men who write the laws." A distant rumble answered him. Hoofbeats. The posse from town was already on their way. McCall pulled his hat low and turned toward the trail leading west. "Tell him I was never here," he said. "But where will you go?" He paused, looking out at the desert stretching endless beneath the dying moon. "Somewhere quiet," he said. "Somewhere they don't remember my name." She reached for him, but he was already walking into the wind. His shadow stretched long behind him, swallowed slowly by the night. When the lawmen finally arrived, they found only the widow and the fallen. Her story was short and steady. She told it like scripture, each word carved in stone. The man who'd help her was no outlaw, no stranger, just a traveler who'd done what was right. And though they searched for him for years after, no one ever found the rich rancher again. But folks said that sometimes, on moonlit nights when the wind came howling through the canyon, you could still hear a rifle click and a woman's voice whisper, "Can you pretend to be my husband tonight?" And the wind would answer softly, "Always."